At last, Sonic Frontiers' third update is out, bringing with it a new story, new playable characters, and new opportunities to avoid jumping. Just like how I did with the main game, I buckled down and worked to answer the question, can you beat Sonic Frontiers Final Horizon without jumping? The answer may or may not shock you. Now when it comes to this game, a jump is anything that requires the action button jump, which is separate from the UI button. Everything else is fair game. That said, let's get into things. The update adds a golden portal near the stars of Oranos Island that leads us to another story, which sees Sage offering Sonic a bold new strategy. Sonic's friends will undo their sacrifice for Sonic, which re-corrupts him, and then they will work to collect the emeralds while Sonic climbs some new towers to turn his corruption into power. This takes place as the player swaps between all four characters in sequential order, starting with Amy. Like with Tails and Knuckles, Amy has her own skill tree to unlock and stats to raise. While they do have unique abilities, they all run and boost like Sonic, so my immediate goal was to do as much as possible before being forced to unlock their new stuff, because XP is kinda hard to come by. You see, this version of Oranos Island has a few boxes and crates, some of which do contain experience shards, but starting out, Amy has no way to deal damage without jumping. So how do we earn skill points then? Well, it's simple. Just find and speak to the backpack Coco inside of the color-coded rings. Each one rewards a one-time lump sum of XP equal to 5 skill points. Now, if all else fails, we can always grind out skill points with Siloop. The ability also allows us to collect all those various dig spots throughout the island. While some contain portal gears which feel kinda useless, others reward Lookout Coco, which are needed to unlock the towers that Sonic will scale later on. That said, Amy is told to search for a Chaos Emerald vault, and she finds all of the normal vaults are empty. The emeralds have been relocated to special new vaults that can't be accessed without the combined help of Amy, Tails, and Knuckles. When it comes to navigating the island as Amy and reaching the first vault, the main issue is crossing the gap between the main and mini island. It's much easier going from the main island to the small island. But that's fine for now. Amy can boost and homing attack cross, and then the final platforms before the vault have plenty of targets to homing attack your way across them. No jumps required. Swapping to Knuckles the Enchilada, navigating the island is a bit easier because he can freely climb red and green walls by simply touching them. Knuckles can also homing attack stuff, and the developers were nice enough to add all kinds of balloons, a lot of which I assume are likely easy mode additions, like they did for the towers on Ray Island with one of the updates. With these, getting to the first impact form is quite easy, but the other is a bit harder. You see, Knuckles can glide by holding the A button, and annoyingly, the game actually expects us to use it. How dare they? So I look to his other abilities. One of the easier ones to unlock is his classic 3-hit punch combo, 2 jabs and an uppercut, which sends him a little bit into the air. Also kinda nostalgic in a way, Knuckles can actually infinitely fly by outsmarting physics. You just punch, 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 parry, and repeat. I can't believe they let this be a thing, and it's just so easy. But I'm glad they did, because it allows us to basically avoid every platforming challenge that Knuckles will have to face, so no jumps are required for any of Knuckles' sections. That done, we move on to Tails, which feels like the weakest of the bunch, at least at the start. He can't homing attack, which makes jumpless navigation extremely limited. Thankfully, some yellow experience I collected as Amy or Knuckles counted, so we actually started with 2 skill points for immediately unlocking a Siloop, but then what do? A lot of the skill point Coco aren't too hard to find, but without useful terrain we have no way to reach them. So we'll cross that bridge later, because for now I was actually able to reach all of Tails' first destinations without any fancy tools. For the first device, which is a Coco with a sign on his head, I used handy springs and boost rings. Then for the emerald, it took a number of attempts, but I was able to land atop the walls of this platforming structure, then boost over to the vault, so all of Tails' first section is jumpless, without too much effort. That done, we return to Sonic, where our previously collected Lookout Coco immediately allow us to tackle the first trial tower. These are essentially more of the same of what was seen on Ray Island, and again, easy mode balloons help out quite a lot. Even without those, the path up has a lot of angled platforms, so we would always have the option of boost launching and stomp bouncing past most of the gaps. At the top, a Coco with a fancy hat forces Sonic into the Dragon's Trial, where we must defeat all enemies with our stats fixed at level 1 within 3 minutes. The soldiers in this fight have various abilities. There's the shield that needs to be dodged around, the metal cylinder that you must Siloop, a punch, and also they have spikes that shoot out of the floor. No jumps are really needed nor expected, I beat this one on my third attempt thanks to isolating and focusing down one enemy at a time. Dodging after getting hit but before landing prevents Sonic from losing rings, which can definitely help a lot in these challenges. That done, it's on to Tower 2. This one has more troubling looking platforms, but balloons and springs work just fine. Like with the Rhea Towers, whenever I fell, I stopped my momentum with parry, then I dodged back towards a nearby platform so that I don't lose all of my progress. All in all, it was pretty easy. The Snake's Trial, on the other hand, was quite painful. We're forced to defeat 4 shell enemies within 2 minutes, and Psyloop is our only unlocked skill. Spoilers, if you Psyloop a shell, hit it a few times, rinse repeat, you'll barely have enough time to work through 2, maybe 3 of them. Another way to fight them is to parry the blade while it's spinning through the air, but doing this from far away does basically nothing. However, if we get far enough away to bait an attack, then homing attack to get close, and then parry whenever the blade is close to the shell enemy, we can actually defeat each enemy in only like 20 seconds. Since parrying doesn't require actual timing, this was pretty easy. As for the third trial tower, everything looks fine until it isn't, following the intended path. After these glowing green boxes, Sonic is propelled onto a rail that encircles the tower. You're expected to jump off the rail, break through some purple plates, which allows us to wall run, and then continue onwards and upwards. Since that's not going to happen, I started looking elsewhere. There is a sloped platform on the ground, but even running at max speed, Sonic can't fling himself high enough to reach the balloons. I also tried seeing if I could get onto this weird upside down pyramid of boxes, but I had no luck. After quite some time, I realized all of this effort was pointless because I could just revisit the Hedgehog Space Program, one of this game's best glitches according to me. Like established in the first video, you can perform a Dark Spine Shuffle or DSS by targeting an enemy, dodging, initiating a stomp, and then boosting. The timing of this can be tricky, but we can actually extend both the timing of a viable launch and go even further if we first lock onto the target, homing attack to get close, but then boost away. This lets us do lock-on actions from further away for a short time. While this island has very few enemies to actually work with, this Silver Hammer Guardian is more than workable, even with a poorly aimed launch. I landed about 2/3 of the way up past the problem rail. Moving upwards, there is another rail just before the top, but this one features a spring taking us directly to the combat trial. This one forces us to fight the wolf enemies mostly as normal, which is just cruel. Now for the fourth trial tower, I'll be honest, I didn't even attempt it. When I got close, I noticed that this guardian was here, so I quickly launched myself directly to the top. This resulted in the cranes trial, which isn't too crazy. It just requires us to fight a ninja with beginner stats. I did die a few times, but emerged victorious by spamming Stomp, Quick Psyloop, and dodging as needed. With this, we've completely undone Sonic's corruption, so it's now up to Amy, Knuckles, and Tails to collect 3 more emeralds, all while they're followed by an ominously growly cloud of data. First, we again control Amy, who has to gather a total of 30 cocoa. No jumps are required, it just took me a bit to find the gray little guys among the gray little ruins. That done, we follow the marker to the Hermit Coco, who sits atop the platform. We can reach with help from more springs and rings. And then we go back to the mainland, where the yellow emerald vault is just sitting out in the open. As Knuckles, we gotta beat up some more impact forms. I didn't even bother checking the normal route, as I was having too much fun just punch flying my way across to the platform. In very little time, I reached the vault, and I moved on to Tails. His first Coco device is accessed by destroying a few launchers with Tails' pitiful little wrenches. We're then told to return to the main island, but how? It probably sounds silly, but Tails can't even get up onto this platform, let alone up to the pink ring that's beyond the angled metal thingy. I spent a good half hour, but I couldn't come up with any way to get back to the mainland. In comes the retooled Starfall, an event that occurs every few nights. Rather than rewarding purple coins, this event in the afterstory has no slot machine, but all of the pillars of light lead to either cocoa or seeds, which are worth an insane amount. I was able to come away with nearly 2,000 cocoa in a single go, more than enough to max out both the speed and ring stats. The seeds also greatly increased my combat stats, but I don't think any of the extra difficult enemies across Ornos worth fighting because they just reward gears and lookout cocoa. With max speed, Tails can boost launch off of terrain to easily reach the mainland, and more than enough cocoa to get the skill points necessary to unlock the Cyclone Boost, where whenever you boost with max rings, Tails will magically get into his flying mech, and then you can just fly wherever. It's amazing, it also invalidates any remaining platform challenges. What fun. Now, we return to the Blue Hedgehog because it's time to climb the final tower, which is thankfully just full of balloons. Also floating enemies, an orb shot out of stationary launchers, all of which allows us to get to the top without jumping. There, we enter the red zone again and meet the Master King Coco.
Somebody's feeling high and mighty. Anyways,
who challenges Sonic to overcome this trial where we must defeat the game's first 3 Titans with level 1 stats. There are no rings to replenish our stock, and ring count remains across all 3 fights. Also, the only way to parry attacks is with the perfect parry, which means timing is crucial. Since rings are constantly counting down in battle as Supersonic, this is one big time trial, and it's absolute pain. Giganto is not too difficult, his attacks in both phases are well choreographed, so parrying isn't difficult. With only a few mess ups, I was able to get this first Titan down with around like 320 rings left. Wyvern starts out easy but tedious because we're forced to climb the Ares Tower and run along the red path, dodging slow moving blasts. This takes a while, but if you pay attention, you can avoid damage and you do not need to jump. The fight, though, is just awful. Since it prioritizes spectacle over gameplay, you can only deal damage after parrying Wyvern, which becomes possible after parrying a rocket back at the Sky Snake. If you fail to parry the rocket or the snake, or you actually parry the rocket and you get hit by a rocket from off screen, you're forced to wait for the boss to fly around until the next opportunity arises. In a normal playthrough, you can totally overlook this fight's flaws, but this trial cemented my opinion that this boss is trash. But that's not the point of this video. I tried multiple times and I ended up referring back to Master Roxas's speedrun tutorials, which all have solid guides on each Titan. This helped a lot, because initially I was performing the hit combo followed by a stomp, but instead performing a cyclone kick, doing a dodge and then immediately stomping, you can output way more damage per second, and doing this correctly apparently lets you skip one of Wyvern's forced parries, which is also very helpful. Eventually I was able to move on to Knight, which can be dangerous. At the start, there is no way to avoid the wave of spikes, so we won't. If we get hit, then dodge mid-air before landing, you don't lose rings, so if we do this, it's possible to start chaining stomp bounces to get us over to the arm rail without jumping. During the fight, if you attack the shield, it will quickly lead Sonic to getting knocked back and then having to ride the spinning shield back to Knight. Don't be fooled by how tubular this looks, it's one big waste of time. Instead, if you attack the shield like once so that Sonic's properly in position, then dodge to circle around to target the head, you can then just spam stomp, and you'll be taken into phase 2 where the goal is simple. Get in the path of the shield, parry it, and send it into Knight. Thankfully, I got this done the first time I actually reached phase 2, finishing out Master Coco's trial after a lot of frustrating attempts. Now, we're given a choice. We can return to exploring the island, swap characters freely, retake the trial, or move on to the final battle. I should note that After Story does have new and difficult cyberspace stages for Sonic to run through, but they reward Lookout Coco, which seems redundant considering how many you can get via dig spots. Since they weren't really necessary, I won't be covering those cyberspace stages, but if you want an extra video discussing their jump viability, let me know in the comments below. For now, it's time to finish this thing. The final boss kicks off with Supreme, the reskinned Giganto we all know and acknowledge, and nothing special is needed to bring him down, so we'll fast forward to when the sky suddenly gets very purpley and the evil moon appears, corrupts Supreme, turning him into the End. I gotta say, I do love the twist of Supreme's design, turning him into this weird, frantic creature, and Sonic is a glorified anime character with his attacks and mannerisms. Mechanically, this fight is frustrating. A lot of time is spent with the cameras literally down among the trees, and when you dodge around to target the energy cord, it's not obvious that anything is actually working until it just unplugs. Oh, and it's yet another supersonic fight, so you never even need to think about jumping. So I'm gonna put aside all of those justified complaints, and we're gonna see how the end ends.
Get ready!
Whoa, that was honestly better than the original game's ending, but it does still leave a lot to be desired. Regardless, we have reached the credits and the end of this DLC, so let's answer the question posed at the start. Can you beat Sonic Frontiers Final Horizon without jumping? Yes. Yes, you can. All that said, thank you so much for watching, and big thanks to my channel members for their support. It really means a lot. If you like this video, why not leave a like, maybe subscribe, and be sure to check out my other Sonic videos. I got a couple videos on Sonic Frontiers, and a bunch on all the other Sonic stuff. That's it for this one. Goodbye.